Okay guys, I need to bend down for this. I'm going to show you a bit about ground balancing. People get really confused about this as well. Most machines now have got an auto ground balance, an auto ground balance. It's constantly tracking the ground. If you can see that. It's a Manticore. So if we go to the feature, sorry, the Equinox 600. So if we go to the features, go right along. See ground balance, alright, and see if I press this wee tick. Oh sorry, that's sweet speed, I've missed it. Ground balance, and I press that wee tick. See the wee squiggle up here? That means auto tracking is on, so it's going to constantly track the ground when I use it. So a wee trick is, you don't need to set the ground, just put the auto track on and just start detecting, and it will constantly update the ground for you. But if you want to manually ground balance it, you can turn that off, and if I press that, I'm going to need to turn it off because there's metal in the floor here. I'm going to show you how to ground balance. When you ground balance, the aim is to hold the coil above 6 inches above the ground. You're going to lower it to 1 inch above the ground, lift it back up. Most machines are really fast at setting the ground balance. It's not like old machines. You had to listen to the threshold and lower it till it went loud and then twist knobs and all that. You don't need to do that anymore, so don't read into it too much. It's very simple. All you do is you press the button, pump the coil and let go. That's it. As soon as the number stabilises, on this it will start at 0. I'll press the tick button, lift it 6 inches like so, and I'll do this 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll guarantee the number in the middle of the screen settles on a number. That's it. Just leave it. You don't need to detect, change it, keep changing it. Maybe every now and again, press the button, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's it. A lot of machines are already fixed ground balance. And when I mean fixed ground balance, I mean that it's factory preset for the worst types of ground. So it's set for probably the worst ground in Europe. The downside to that is if you put it too much positive for bad ground, which I'm going to get into in a minute, you lose some depth, and it's better discrimination, but your depth isn't as good. So setting your ground balance is easy. Press the button, pump. That's you manually ground balance the machine, right? It's probably the same in most machines. You just press a button, pump it till it stabilises. That's you. It's called a fast grab, or fast ground balance, but that's just called a fast grab. Some of them have got a wee trigger under here, like the old T2, so you would pull the trigger, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it settles. Alright, so I'm going to clip the video, get back, and I'm going to explain a bit more about ground balance. Okay, that was a quick demo on how to ground balance using the fast grab method. Very easy. You probably won't ever use the old method of twisting a knob, lowering it and try to get it right in between minus and positive. You'll never use that, so it's all fast grab now, so you don't even need to worry about it. And like when I ground balanced, all I had to do was go in, switch it on to auto track, and the machine just tracks it for you, right? I'm going to tell you why you would use auto track and why you wouldn't. But firstly, I'm going to tell you a wee story about ground balancing. Years ago we had a machine called the XP Gold Max Power. You can still buy them because they're still excellent machines. It was a predecessor to the XP DS. So I used the Gold Maxes for years, loved them, found loads of hammies with them, and most people set it up the same way. We would put it into auto to cut out coke. We would set the ground to about 11 o'clock. We would set the sensitivity to about 2 o'clock, and tones whatever suited you, 2 or 3 tones. Alright, that's basically how we set it. And the coke, when you cut out coke, it cut out coke, so it was like a form of discrimination, and it allowed you to detect everything else, right? So I was on a site one day, it was highly mineralised, and I always took coins down and cut halves, things like that, to bury them, to try and see what settings was maximum for that field. So I cut half and I put my standard settings in that we'd been using, most people used on it. And what I done was, I buried the cut half, and you're only talking that, it was highly mineralised ground. So I buried it to my normal settings, just lost it, okay, that they couldn't pick it up. Then what I done was, I started increasing the sensitivity. It made no difference between 12 o'clock all the way up, it didn't make, so it was halfway to full, the sensitivity didn't make one iota difference. Which kind of surprised me a wee bit, because you get stuck into a kind of way of trying to over-sensitise the machine, and as I mentioned in the sensitivity, we all do it. So that's a good test for you to realise that, hold on a minute, am I making this machine really erratic for no reason? Because it's no actual benefit to actually putting too much sensitivity in when you don't need it. You can only put in what the ground will allow. If the ground is highly mineralised, it's like trying to get through a wall, a mineralisation, so your machine only goes through, and then it just can't receive the signal for the target. So it doesn't matter how much sensitivity you put in there, it's just not going to work. So I put it back to my normal setting, and then what I started doing was putting the ground to the left, so you get a positive and a negative ground balance. So imagine 12 o'clock, anything prior to 12 o'clock is negative, anything after 12 o'clock is positive. Alright, so we had ours slightly negative to 11 o'clock, so I started tweaking it so as it would go by there to 10 o'clock, and I started hitting the hammy. That surprised me, I went, oh wow. So, and this wasn't a new thing, I didn't invent this, this was this is way back in the White's XLTs and DFXs. You could set the machine to run negative, the ground balance to run negative automatically, or you could set it to run positive. But years ago, I never paid any attention to that, because I just set the ground balance and went away. But so that just shows you, even after 20 years metal detecting, you're always learning, and you're always just be practicing with your machines. So what I done was took a coin out, I buried it further, and I tweaked it. So I was actually running it. So ground, so it's 1, 2, 3, 9 o'clock. I had it set at 9 o'clock, and I was getting far more depth with that than I got setting it, the sensitivity too high. The reason that is because I was setting the machine's ground for the soil. So I was setting it properly so the machine could actually see through for its maximum, that it would allow for that sensitivity. It still didn't matter if I tweaked up the sensitivity, I didn't get any more, but I did when I set the ground balance properly. If I went too far with the ground balance, I started picking up big stones that were giving great signals, so I had to push it up so that it would just cut the stones out, and I could settle at 9 o'clock. Now for me that was like a eureka moment, because there I was getting an extra 2 inches on a cut half that I wasn't getting. So that for me is invaluable. So if I started putting my ground balance up towards 12 o'clock, I started losing the cut half again. So I hear people online saying, oh, just put your sensitivity, ground balance to 0, or just, you don't need to set it, just put it to 0. No, it is very important. The reason they're saying put it to 0 and things like that is to try and get maximum depth out of it. Always set your ground balance, set it properly for the ground you're on. If it's variable ground, you can put it on auto track. Why you wouldn't put it on auto track when there's a lot of iron is because when the machine tracks into a bit of iron, it actually thinks it's ground. So just for say's sake, the ground's reading 100. Everywhere you go, you're detecting it's reading 100, and you hit a patch when it's iron. So it goes over the iron and it maybe reads, just for say's sake, 140. It will change the ground balance setting to 140, and then when you pass the iron, it will change it back to 100. And then if it goes over another bit of iron, it will keep changing it. So what happens is, if there's a lot of iron, your machine will constantly try and track the ground and it will track into the iron, so it will be constantly going up and down, so you're not getting a proper ground balance reading. So what you need to do is find a clean bit of ground and turn auto track off, or some people call it track, they lock the track. So they'll lock it so it's fixed, and it doesn't matter if it goes over iron, it will never change it, it keeps it the same. So that's the reason you get that feature of turning the tracking on or tracking off. If you're on a field and it's variable ground, so if you ground balance at one bit and it reads 20, and then 20 minutes later you're up the field and you ground balance and it goes to 50, you're thinking, that's jumping about a bit. You can put it onto auto track and it will constantly change it for you, and it will let you know when it's changed. So ground balancing is important. People overcomplicate it. You're really only lifting the coil 6 inches, pressing the button, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the machine's that quick, while you're pressing the button it will change it. As soon as it settles on a fixed number, leave it, and that's it. Okay, and that's as simple as that. So ground balancing is important. Setting it properly, it can get you better depth. If you set it too negative, then you lose quality discrimination. You will get deeper, but you can lose discrimination. If you set it more positive, i.e. by 12 o'clock, then what will happen is you'll get better discrimination and slightly less depth. So if you're getting a lot of nails and a lot of iron, try putting your ground balance, the number up a wee bit. So if it settles in 30, go in, manually change it to 40 and see if it helps, okay? And that maybe help with your discrimination. So that's the easy way to explain ground balance. I'm not going to overcomplicate it. It's very simple. If it's got auto track, to be honest, I rarely use auto track. I keep it in fixed, and then every 20 minutes I just pump the coil, and that's it. It's as simple as that. So, because I don't know, the sites I search usually have got a lot of iron on it, so I usually run it fixed. So it's very easy. Pump the coil, forget about it for 20 minutes, pump the coil, and it's as simple as that. Most machines have got a wee fast grab feature on them. Alright, but if you're not sure of it, Eden, just stick me a wee PM. Alright?